My time in Ukraine really changed my perspective on that war, and I came back a real sort of hawk, thinking that we should fully support Ukraine
Really?
in the war. Yeah.
Why's that?
Part of it was just being with the people I just like the Ukrainians, in a way that I've been to other former Soviet bloc countries. And it's kind of like, I won't name any of them, but I just feel like, I'm not sure you guys are really down with the freedom and democracy thing, It seems like you were subjugated for a while and I just didn't get the same vibe. Like, I think the Ukrainians are legitimately freedom-loving people, okay, that have been like under the thumb of corrupt leadership for decades now.
Yeah.
But part of it was, there was something very enthralling about being in a place where everyone was so unified, like this country under attack, being invaded by a hostile force. Now, these are the Ukrainians that have stayed behind, okay? But there's still a lot of them. I mean, and just that coming from America, where everything is so splintered and divided now, and to be in a place where everyone is so on the same page, there's something very attractive about that.
Well, that is what happens when you get invaded. Do you remember what it was like in America after 9/11?
Right after 9/11, yeah.
It was the most united this country has ever been.
Right.
And it's a horrible thing to say,
right,
because it's not what you ever want to happen again, to wake everybody up. But it was the thing that was required to make people put American flags on their cars. And it was, in a lot of ways, it was a horrible tragedy, but in a lot of ways, the reaction to it was very beautiful. There was so many people that were I was in New York City like just a few weeks or a few months after 9/11. And everybody was friendly. It was crazy.
Right.
It was like everybody was just so blown away by the experience of being attacked and so just shaken out of it and so aware of how fortunate they were to not be one of those people who died, and that we are legitimately all together, and that there are forces out there that are evil, and that we have to stay united. And I hate to think that that's what's required to wake people up from this division. But I always wonder, I wonder if maybe the division that we have in this country is because of the fact that we're never attacked, and because of the fact that we only experienced a few of the Pearl Harbor, 9/11. There's only a few of these moments where we've had to wake up.
Yeah. Yeah. The Aleutian Islands, actually in Alaska, were attacked and occupied by Japanese forces in World War II.
Oh, really?
Little known fact. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
That's actually American territory.
I didn't know that.
But we fucking, man, the Ukrainians, they had nuclear weapons, and in 1994, the quote-unquote West, the U.S. and the U.K., basically convinced them, to give up their nukes in exchange for a guarantee that we would help them protect their sovereign territory.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was right after the fall
Yeah.
of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many factors, right? There's the NATO encroaching on Russia's territory.
In 2004, NATO started handing out membership cards like fucking crackerjack prizes, right? Putin gets reelected in 2004, 20 years ago, and all of a sudden, all these former Soviet, small territories are now NATO countries.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to be NATO? Oh, well, great. Now we're signed up for a mutual defense treaty with Lithuania.
Right.
Nothing against Lithuanians, but fuck, man, this is getting serious.
It's very serious.
What happens if he invades a NATO country? What are we going to do?
Right.
Because China's watching, and I'll tell you, I've been under fire would be overdramatic, but I've had quite a few Iranian fucking Shahed drones launched in my general direction recently. It gives you another perspective on Russia's support for Iran and vice versa. Mutual enemy of ours. Those are Iranian fucking drones being shot at us. And I don't know, Russia recently had Hamas, had a delegation from Hamas visit the Kremlin. What the fuck, man?
Really?
Yeah. So anyway.
This is a fucking sketchy time,
It
man.
really is.
It's such a sketchy time.
It's to say World War III is imminent. It sounds doomsayer, but it feels like it could go that way in a hurry. China, they're looking at us. That's the problem if we sort of showed our ass and backed down, if Putin keeps going, is then China may just test that red line right? With Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, I think they're preparing for that.
Yeah.
At least when I've talked to people that understand.
Yeah. You know, I think that the war in Ukraine could have been prevented. I think that there was this false dichotomy where there were forces in the U.S. government, and this is part of the documentary I want to make, is about, that forced you. There was like, you either have to be, a puppet of Russia or our puppet. You have to be NATO or there's no middle ground.
Right.
When in fact, I think that Ukraine could have been a bridge, a peaceful bridge between Russia and the quote-unquote West, where maybe it could have joined the European Union economically, free trade, but not joined NATO, right? Because that's what Putin was so adamant against. And you understand, I mean, I think he's a war criminal, fucking power-mad, asshole, right? But you can sort of see from his perspective, if you look at a map and you start to see all these NATO countries around Russia, you kind of see, what motivates him.
Well, that's what people in the State Department had always said that was his red line. His red line was Ukraine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when they're trying to get Ukraine to join NATO, it's like, what are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing? We bringing about World War III, and why? And how much money is being spent?
Right.
And where's that money going?
Right. Yeah.
And who's got a vested interest in keeping that money flowing?
Yeah.
And that's where it gets scary.
Right. That's what I'm looking into, and I don't want to tip my hand too much, but I think I've got pretty convincing evidence that the U.S. Department of Justice has been used by the U.S. State Department to further U.S. foreign policy interests in Ukraine in ways that aren't really right, like bringing criminal charges against people in the U.S., but like Ukrainians, like charging them with crimes in the U.S., including some people that have never even set foot in the United States, charging with crimes or getting them out of trouble, like dropping criminal charges against them to sort of like, and again, it goes back to like our designating, you're a good guy, you're a bad guy. You're corrupt, you're not, even though they're both just grabbing, billions with both hands. So
it's a fucking scary time, man. It really is. Yeah. It's wild to me that Zelensky is the president too. You have essentially a comedian who played the president on a television show. And they're like, we like you.
If they held an election today, he would not be reelected.
No?
No. But then they support him. It's interesting. It's like you ask them, do you support the president? They say yes, like we're at war. Would you vote for him? No.
Why was there opposition?
I think he's mismanaging the war, and also I think they suspect that he's corrupt.
Yeah.
And I think he probably is. But the fact that 50 cents of every dollar that we send there, this isn't actually how it goes down, but even if that was the case, is going into somebody's pocket doesn't mean that we can just turn Ukraine over to Russia, in my opinion. I think that we should be backing them full on militarily, not with U.S. troops, but giving them what they need to fight. Because, I talked to a lot of special forces guys over there. They're basically those Russian human waves attacks. We're just mowing these guys. It's not even really combat. We're just mowing these guys down until we run out of bullets, and then we have to retreat. Those are the battles. That's what Putin's able to do because he's got so many guys.
And he's also letting people out of jail.
Yeah.
Letting people out of jail and giving them, you serve, and your time is, your sentence is rescinded.
Well, so people think of Russia and they think of Moscow and St. Petersburg, but you look at that country on a map, it's fucking massive.
It's huge.
There's so much territory east of the Ural Mountains. It's just a bunch of villages, what we call flyover country, right? Well, Putin is offering deals like sign up, where it's more money than they make in a year per month, A, and then B, if you're killed, your family's set up for life. They can buy a house, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very attractive offers for these really poor people from rural Russia.
And then they're using them as just human cannon fodder.
100%. 100%.
I just can't remember a time in my life where things had just seemed so unhinged.
No, I asked my parents about that too, including my dad before he passed. They were like, no, we don't remember. Even Watergate, Vietnam era, they weren't really old enough to remember the Great Depression, but even that was just sort of limited to the U.S. I mean, I know there were global, effects of that, ricochets of that, but it feels like it could go sideways on us in a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And then what does that look like? That's what's terrifying. What's terrifying is if you're willing to do, like, let's say what Israel's doing in Gaza, if you're willing to almost eliminate a city, just bomb the fuck out of a city and kill who knows how many innocents. What are the numbers? It's 30,000. I don't know what the numbers are. What's the line that keeps you from dropping a nuke that kills 300,000? What's the line? Like when you know, why do we have this idea that it won't accelerate to that when it has in the past? It's just because we only did it once,
right,
in Japan in 1945. Is that what it is?
I agree with your assessment of that danger.